And right now, continuing on that discussion, Katie Pavlich from townhall.com joins us. Katie, good evening.
Good evening. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Glad you're with us tonight. All right, so a name we've heard before has resurfaced with the investigation into Fast and Furious. Kevin Riley, who is a former staffer with the National Security Council, now over in Iraq. Congressional investigators want to talk to Mr. Riley. What do they want to ask him about, Katie?
Well, first we'll give the listeners a little flashback of who Kevin O'Reilly is and when his name was brought up. We first learned about Kevin O'Reilly publicly in the July 26th House Oversight Committee hearing on Fast and Furious last summer. Getting close to a year now actually. And so, his name was brought up after Bill Newell, who is a former special agent in charge of the Phoenix office, brought his name up when he was questioned about emails back and forth between the two about what the connection was. Now, the reason why Chairman Issa and Senator Grassley want to talk to Kevin O'Reilly is because, on the basic level of Bill Newell, who was in charge of the office that ran Fast and Furious, was in direct contact with someone at the White House who happened to be on a national security advisor team at the White House. And then those emails were also shared with two other staffers at the White House, too. And so the reason they want to talk to him is they want to know how far up did this go? Was this really just a basic conversation of old friends catching up, but that's what Bill Newell said they were doing? Or was this really him being in contact with the White House about, the day-to-day operations during Operation Fast and Furious, and what did people at the White House know? Was Kevin O'Reilly briefing other people in the White House, more senior officials within the White House? And it was funny because you go back to the timeline, and when Kevin O'Reilly's name was first brought up in July, magically 2 months later he was over in Iraq on assignment. So the timing is iffy. So they want to know who he is, and they want to talk to him and see what he knows. And basically, his personal lawyer, is saying, "Well, we're willing to talk, but the White House won't let us do it." And so that once again, we're not only seeing stonewalling from the Justice Department now, but directly coming from the White House.
Yeah, and this is interesting because, the administration has said repeatedly that they are the most transparent administration in history.
Right.
Attorney General Holder has said that they've been bending over backwards to cooperate with these investigators. Well, this gets it out of the DOJ for a moment anyway, and it puts it right on the White House and on President Obama. Are you really interested in wrapping up this investigation? Are you really interested in helping investigators figure out what went wrong, or do you want to stonewall as well as the Attorney General?
Well, and going back to, the iffy timeline of the Attorney General, Eric Holder, and Barack Obama, let's remember, going back to Eric Holder's testimony in May of last year, when he said, "I've only known about Operation Fast and Furious for a few weeks," right? Well,
right.
If you remember, President Obama did an interview months before he claimed he knew before Eric Holder claimed he knew for a few weeks. Barack Obama did an interview with Univision claiming, in March, claiming that, the Attorney General didn't know about it, didn't authorize it, blah, blah, blah. The question then became, how did the President know about Fast and Furious before the Attorney General did? Eric Holder has since said that he should have said he knew about it for a couple of months. That's still iffy because memos show he knew nearly a year before, when he's still claiming in February that's what he found out. So just to, back up the timeline a little bit on what the White House may or may not have known. This is, putting it back on the White House, yes. This brings up the question of executive privilege. If the White House is going to stonewall and not allow the Oversight Committee in Congress to interview this guy, who was, exchanging emails. You remember the emails between him and Bill Newell? Bill Newell sent him a map of the guns from Arizona showing where they're going in Mexico.
Right.
Shared a detailed map with him. Talked about, not sharing certain things with other people, which makes it seem like, this is a hush-hush thing, which goes to the broader idea of, was this being used to push a political agenda? And of course they wouldn't want everyone knowing about it, because then someone who has a conscience would have said something either to the press or tried to stop it. And so Yeah, I mean, the White House spokesperson has said that they're, reviewing the request and that there's no reason to allow them to interview Kevin O'Reilly at this point. And then it always goes back to what you and I have talked about so many times. If there's nothing to hide, then why not dump it all out on the table, whether it's documents or whether it's Kevin O'Reilly. And what people need to understand is, the Oversight Committee doesn't have to publish any of what Kevin O'Reilly says, anything about what he says.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to tell us anything. They don't have to tell the public anything about what Kevin O'Reilly would reveal. So this whole ongoing investigation line that's going to come from the White House and that's been coming from the Justice Department for over a year now doesn't play well, and it doesn't hold water because none of what the Oversight Committee is privileged to has to be public knowledge anyway.
Well, absolutely. So this is going to be, I think this is going to be a fascinating turn of developments here. April 4th, that's the deadline that the House Oversight Committee has given the White House?
Mm-hmm. Right. And then the question becomes, well, we've seen deadlines ignored multiple times.
Right.
And so what are they really going to do if another deadline is ignored? I know that, talking to people that they're getting a little restless with the continued warnings of contempt, but no contempt charges have been brought. I remember Darrell Issa is issuing his first contempt charge on April Fool's Day, or not April Fool's Day, but a year ago in April when the first subpoenas issued in this case were ignored. It's been a year, and so I'm not really sure what his power is in terms of the White House. But it will go to show if the White House decides to pull the executive privilege card that there really is a lot more to this story, just like we've all been saying, and a lot that they don't want to get out, especially in an election year.
Yeah, absolutely right. Talking with Katie Pavlich from townhall.com. And, Katie, I have to thank you for blogging about National Take Your Daughter to the Range Day.
Absolutely. I mean, come on. Who wants to go to work when you can go shooting at the range with your dad?
Well, listen, I'm all in favor of this, and we recently profiled Lynn Finch from Take Your, who's started the National Take Your Daughter to the Range Day, and you wrote about this at townhall.com. I know you are a gun owner yourself. Your friend Liz Meineke, I know, would like to be a shooter as well. Are you seeing more interest among your friends and colleagues about becoming gun owners and shooters?
Absolutely. I have to brag a little bit.
Yeah.
Living Social has been giving out these discounts on concealed carry classes. And a couple months ago, they had one of them, and I forwarded it to the people in my office, and I got 3 people to sign up. And so they all have their concealed carry permits now. I'm pretty proud of that. But I think the culture in general has changed, I mean, you talked about it before, pushing for new gun control legislation is the support for that is at an all-time low. I think that the idea of bringing guns into pop culture in a reality show kind of way has really helped people realize that shooting guns isn't about gangsters and bad people. It's about doing it safely, but it can be really fun and a good way to get out with the family or to have a hobby or to learn about whatever you want. It doesn't have to be this big bad scary thing that we should brainwash people against, to quote Eric Holder. But yeah, I'd say that we do see a lot of interest, and it makes me very happy because we're winning that war, which is a good thing.
Absolutely right. Well, listen, Katie, thanks again for coming on the program. It's always a pleasure getting a chance to talk to you, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Yep, we'll talk to you soon, Kim. Have a good one.
You too. Katie Pavlich joining us from townhall.com.